Hi there, and welcome to the ATS podcast with me, Will Brown, and John Soulsby, where we break down chunks of health and fitness information into bite sized pieces, remove a bunch of the noise, and just leave what's relevant. Today we are on episode 45, and the topic for today is emotions and anxiety around training.
Yeah. I'm assuming like we're going to talk mainly about what people would perceive as negative emotions and anxiety rather than just like being fucking stoked to go to the gym.
Yeah, I think that's the emotions and anxiety kind of in a pairing like that seems to almost exude a negative
But
connotation.
I feel like, well, I suppose from a discussion point of view, I don't know. It's very, very rare for me to have seen anyone have a negative impact from being excited to go to the gym or like
Yeah,
being too keen to go to the gym. The only thing I suppose is like if you're talking in a powerlift or a competitive sense in anything, if you're far too amped up and therefore unable to concentrate in the competitive task you have to do, then your performance is going to go down.
oh yeah, like there's an
I suppose
optimal.
that's
I believe
maybe
I
a
believe it's called an optimal level of arousal.
yeah,
I did pick bones with Zoe about why the fuck the people in the research places call it arousal, but apparently
yeah.
it's
I
completely
think we
valid.
brought it. I think we brought it up in the little series we did. So in like I think again we mainly focus there on the negatives or people's perception of negative emotions rather than just being like too hype. But I haven't really seen it being a problem too much. Powerlifting, funnily enough, is actually where I see it be the problem the most because people feel like you need to like ram nose truck up your nose and have someone fucking beat you up in the back room before you can go pull a opening deadlift.
I'm still keen to see if there is actually. I keep meaning to do it. I'm not entirely convinced there's actually any decent empirical data on ammonia improving performance, like acute performance in strength tasks.
That would be interesting. It's kind of anecdotally, it like feels like it does, but I wonder if it does
Oh,
actually
very
work.
much. Like you can the old power of positive association, like one of
Yeah,
those all-time
but
great studies where they had the guy again, it would never get past an ethics board, but it was the person who like debated their powerlifting team into thinking they were on gear and everyone's totals went up
yes, I
and then they
remember that.
told
Yeah,
half of them they actually weren't on gear and they returned to pre-bamboozle levels and the
yeah.
others stayed the same. It's like yeah, they believe they're on gear, but they're not
Yeah,
actually on gear.
the power of placebo is amazing.
Oh yeah, massive. Like I again I have fucking absolute barely entry level knowledge on data interpretation, but I'm pretty sure they actually have a coefficient to try and like essentially associate with that. That's like as in
Yeah,
they have like a coefficient to chuck on before the relative significance of the data is interpreted to account for likelihood of placebo. As in like if it's a double blind, then people don't really know, or like depending on how you set stuff up, like if you're setting up like a supplement if you just give one group the supplement and the other group gets fuck all. Like the people without obviously know they're not getting anything, which is why
whereas
you
if
do the
everyone gets a nondescript pill,
yeah.
no one knows.
Like you were doing your COVID like your 5G vaccine. You're getting your
Oh
chip.
yeah, I didn't get told until it was like there was like an actual mandate on what you had to get up to and like what next ones you could get, and then I had to know so that I could actually get the right next
Yeah, which again is pretty funky. Um, Emotional anxiety around training. Again from so for anxiety, like a very this might be this is again from a very grasping at basic understanding of the topic. But as far as I am aware, anxiety doesn't have a clinical diagnosis. Like there is no like with depression you have clinical and non-clinical, if I'm aware, which is like a depressive episode where you essentially feel really shit. However,
one. Yeah,
there's like nothing testably wrong with you. However, you have clinical depression, which is due to some funky chemical imbalance,
right. Yeah,
limitations, receptor issues in brain. Um, Whereas anxiety, I don't believe, has a clinically diagnosable pathway.
I honestly have no idea.
But the point being that it kind of, and again, I think a lot of this seems to be reflected. You obviously have medications and things that can help manage the symptoms, but the symptoms, from well, my understanding of it, are almost entirely self-generated. Like I imagine some people are going to be more sensitive in various things, but it seems like a lot of things are self-perpetuating and self-fixing. Like you are the only real person that can kind of help yourself with anxiety a lot of the time. Like it is just something you kind of have to deal with.
Yeah.
You can have medications and things to help manage the symptoms and stuff, and it might be that it's made worse by other medical conditions and various things. But for anxieties around the gym and around training, I think because again, everything that I feel people would say that comes up as a relatable feeling of anxiousness about the gym or training are just kind of thoughts. Like they aren't always real.
Thoughts or thinking thoughts?
Yeah, like they kind of just thinking thoughts, not hose. Um, like not like Megan the Stallion isn't like. I mean,
Yeah.
if she is policing your gym and not letting you in for some reason, then yeah, fair enough. Like I wouldn't want to mess with that either.
No.
She could take me 100%. The but yeah, it just seems like the or classic kind of stuff around training is I feel bad. Like classic training scenario. I mean, fucking me today. Like you feel like you don't get very good sleep. You know you've got to train, and you're like minted. I can't wait for training to be impacted by my lack of sleep. In my head,
Yeah.
I know that given that I don't sleep the best most times, like I'm on and off. Like I sometimes have good sleep, sometimes have bad sleep.
Yeah.
Likelihood that it's like devastatingly impacted, moderate to low just after one night. If it was two successive nights, I'd be much less surprised if it was terrible.
Yeah.
And even then, it's still like you still have it where you're like, oh, training's gonna be shit, and then you're like, you don't actually know that. You're just like, I'm expecting it to be bad because I've had a lack of sleep, but then you kind of think it through, or I think it through, and I was like, well, it's only been one night. Night before was actually okay. Um, we'll maybe pre-workout today instead of when I usually wouldn't, and then I would just be like, we'll see how it goes. Doorbell pinging in the background, very good. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
we'll just pre-workout and we'll just see how it goes.
And for you, today is an example of that. Of like, yeah, she pulled a PB.
Yeah, like second week of block. I don't really have any decent data for my usual second week of block on trap bar deadlift because last time actually it did go well, but I also pinged something which like floored me for like, or meant that the subsequent couple of weeks went badly.
Yeah.
Um,
Um.
so it was just a case of how you feel things might go or think things might go aren't always how they might go. Like super classic example that isn't the gym is when people like are worried about dentist appointments or like they don't like the dentist or whatever, but
Yeah.
the kind of anticipation and like the build up of unease about it almost always is worse.
Yeah.
Like
Um,
like for folk than the actual kind of going there.
and I think that's where like it's really good. It reframes back into mindfulness, which we talked about with Zoe in episode 34, and essentially like making sure it's not putting a positive spin on things, but realizing like why is this a gym session as an example? Why do you think it's going to be shit? And is that just you putting that spin on it, or is there actually something going on that might make it crap?
Yeah, like and realistically, like performance can be kind of sporadic, but most of the time you physically can't know. Like this is what I find funny about it is that like you can't know. Like the $1 million idea in fitness is and sport training in general is if you have some way to predict training outcomes prior to training. Like if you had some little measurement, something you could do that would accurately and consistently turf out correct training outcomes, as in like this person is this percent trainable today, they are good for this, and it was pretty much dead on consistently all the time. I feel like you would make infinite money.
Yeah.
Like any and all professional sports teams would be like minted. We have
Yeah.
we literally have an accurate and consistent statistics to tell us how ready to play our players are. That's correct. We're like minted. It's literally like having Madden, but in real life. You're like, oh, this player is green today. Minted. Let's go. So yeah, it just becomes a thing of, and emotions around training are also good, but you can use them. I think it's how you frame stuff. I think is what we're getting at. We've used the word reframing already, but I think in terms of
Yeah.
anxiety, it very much is a reframe. Like training isn't a negative experience. Like overall, it just isn't. Like
Yeah.
there might be some negative things associated with it, like if you're injured,
Stiff
it
loss.
might be pain. Yeah, there might be pain, there might be some discomfort, but that isn't bad either. Like that's how you get better almost all the time.
Yeah.
Like there are very few things that are comfortable that make you better over time consistently. Uh, but yeah, the again, this isn't. I think one of the key things that we talked about with Zoe is that it's fine. Like you need to acknowledge the thoughts. Like
Mm.
Megan the Stallion, you need to acknowledge your thinking and be like, I feel this way. Probably cause, like for today, be like, I probably feel like this because I'm tired and I'm annoyed that it might affect my training because I want my training to go well. But then I'm like, but in reality, it might not affect my training. I can't know that. Like, but in front
Mm.
of time, I can't know that. If it turns out that it does affect it, I'll be like, oh well, that's why. If it turns out good, I'll be like, meh, cool, pleasant
Yeah.
surprise. Like that's kind of it. Like there's like if you have this kind of this kind of negative framing of oh the gym's gonna be pish, like blah 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 blah, like it's gonna be minging, I don't want to do it. Fine, that's okay. You can have those thoughts, but you should still do it, and you should try and talk yourself through a little positive reframe of why do I think it's gonna go bad? Like oh well, I'm tired and I've had a shit day at work. And you're like all right cool, but that really won't affect how you train unless you let it. And also, like, you might feel better after the gym. You probably normally feel better after the gym. So it might actually be a bit of a positive if you've had a shit day at work.
Hmm.
Like, if you got like a fucking heavy bag class, you could go pretend it's someone at work who pisses you off. Like, do that kind of stuff. There's with regards to like other kinds of, I guess with regards to other kinds of anxiety for people getting in the gym, like, a lot of them, I guess, are like social pressure stuff. Like,
Yeah.
people knowing or people like for some reason judging you. I'm not going to pretend like there aren't arseholes all over the place that might do that,
There
but
are plenty.
I mean there are.
There's too many.
But I think they're in the vast minority of people.
I yeah, by too many I mean that there's any, but yes, there
Yeah,
are
more than zero, too many.
pretty much it is definitely in the minority. To be blunt, I'd say in most situations people just don't care. Like
Yeah, they're
you're
just doing
you're
their
not
own
on their
thing.
radar. I think it's like always a classic thing of like if something you're anxious about in your own, like about you embarrassing yourself or something like that, like no one else even like cares. Like
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, a very very local example on your stag do. I believe you were dressed in a very local garb of some
I
lederhosen in
was,
Germany.
yes, it was lovely.
Don't I
And
really don't think that many people gave a shit that there was some tourist
no,
wandering around in lederhosen giving like
no,
tour guide directions. Like it really didn't clock too many people. They kind of
or
just looked and were like, "That's weird," and then just kind of wandered on.
yeah,
And that
um,
was, and I mean, that's an extreme example. Like no one's that. I mean,
yeah.
if you're actually doing that in the gym, then you can't really be surprised that anyone's paying attention. But
Mm.
yeah, I think the key takeaways around emotions and anxiety in the around training and in the gym is just to try and give yourself a little bit of time and space to acknowledge the thoughts that you're having and see if you can positively reframe some stuff around them. Cause you know that's the gym is pretty much always a good thing.
Yeah,
Right.
totally
We
agree.
shall catch you in the next one.